All right. Now, age of railroads. We've already talked about when we did the Western Unit, the Transcontinental Railroad. Here we got the classic picture from Promontory Point, Utah. The railroad, it connects our countries. The resources in the West can be brought to the cities in the East. Plus, we also had tons of workers brought in that helped to build the railroad from the West, the Chinese, in the middle from Nebraska to the West. That was the Irish that came in. But just realize it is resources and nothing to worry about.
All right. And so another thing that came from this was the standard time or railroad time. And so this standard time, it made it so that time was the same everywhere across the nation, or it was split up into hours, broken up across 4 places across the nation. And so this was important because for railroads, people that would wait to get on a station, they wouldn't know what time to go off of, whether the time where the train was coming from or where it was getting to. And this just led to a lot of confusion.
Yeah, and another way to look at it, we actually literally set the mark on this for the rest of the entire world. Now, I already highlighted the idea of the growth of towns and markets. Connecting the country meant connecting different markets. All right. If you are in Chicago, where we had meat packing industry, canning industries, those goods could be canned and made, and then they could be shipped to the East Coast, where we had huge population centers making different, making all different kinds of things that people would need in the industry, whether it's soap to clothing to toothbrushes and wipes for everybody.
It allowed for specialization for those cities. So then those cities, instead of having to make everything, they could focus on just, as Mr. Pittman said, meat packing in Chicago.
Absolutely excellent point.
All right, and so here's just a little graphic to show just how vast it expanded and how quickly. So these were railroads that were built in the 1870s, and as you can see, it's focused mainly along the east. But then just in the 1890s, there was an explosion of railroads everywhere, and by 1890, or at the beginning of the Civil War, the nation had about 30,000 miles of track, but by 1890, that figure was nearly 6 times greater.
So do some quick, simple math. 30,000 times 6. What is it? Oh! All right. Age of railroads continues. Some issues. Problem. Corruption. This goes all the way up and down the chain of command. From like people in Congress saying, oh, you'll get this railroad contract, to the railroad contractor saying, hey, we'll give you this and that. And then you also got railroad abuses, which I think Mr. Lorimer is going to talk to you guys a little bit more about. I'm going to talk to you about one idea, and that is gauge width. All right. We have 2 tracks of railroads. They're going the same way. And, I start out in Pennsylvania and everything is 3 feet apart. But when I get to, say, Ohio, and all of a sudden their train, the width between their tracks is 3.5 feet. I have to take all my goods off and I have to put them on to a different train and a different track. We standardize the gauge of the railroad, the width of the tracks, so that the same train can go all the way across the country. Mr. Lorimer is going to add some more ideas to it.
All right. And so some of the abuses that went on that the railroad did, so they would raise prices, like prices for farmers to ship their goods across the country were incredibly high. And so the farmers got incredibly frustrated about this. And so they ended up forming the Granger movement. And, they came together, and then they ended up actually getting a law passed in Illinois to restrict some of the power that the railroads had.
Yep. And then this eventually leads to the Interstate Commerce Commission and the Interstate Commerce Act, which is where the American government regulated interstate traffic between state to state. In America today, what's probably the main mode of delivery of commerce that we use to regulate? Is it the railroad? Is it something else? Think about it. Say an answer out loud. Go tell your mom. Go tell your dad, your little niece or nephew, and see what happens. All right. Forum topic 2. One, what were the working conditions like for the workers building the Transcontinental Railroad? You're going to have to go look that one up, see what it's like. Two, write about one good thing that came from the growth of railroads and one bad thing. I want you to look back to this map here and think about some things that might happen. There's some pathways that are kind of illustrated, but also just think about expansion. All right, that's Forum 2. Have a good one.